Good afternoon. My name is Sinead O'Higgins, and on behalf of Europe Direct Waterford, Waterford Libraries and the Environment Department of Waterford Council, I am delighted to welcome Dr Edward Pollard, who will speak about the impact of climate change on coastal heritage and give us some examples from the Waterford coast. Edward is an archaeological researcher on the CHERISH Project based in the Discovery Programme Centre for Archaeology and Innovation Ireland in Dublin. This short lecture is to coincide with the display of the CHERISH Project on climate change, which is here in our index gallery in our central library until Thursday, the 31st of March. And also with us this morning is Dr. Linda Shine from the Discovery Programme. And if you have any questions, please pop them in the Q&A and Linda will be keeping an eye on those. So the lecture itself will be recorded and shared with you afterwards, and it'll last about 20 minutes, and we will have 10 minutes for questions at the end. So I am going to hand you over now to Dr. Edward Pollard, and you're very welcome here with us today.
Hello everyone. So thank you for letting me talk here today. So we've been very interested in the coast of Waterford since 2017 when we started with the CHERISH Project. We saw there's got the mining heritage from the geopark, but also it's got a complex of at least around 30 promontory forts, which are in various states of erosion, which seem to be very interesting, which we wanted to investigate much more closely. So, what is CHERISH? Well, CHERISH, it's an acronym. It stands for the Climate, Heritage, Environments of Reefs, Islands and Headlands. We've got the various, apart from the Copper Coast is our area 4, but we've also been working from up near to the north of Dublin and around the Braemore tombs that there, where you've got the New Haven port as well from post-medieval, but you've also got the Neolithic cairns and Bronze Age cairns there. That area extends to Gull Island. We've got looking at shipwrecks on the strand there as you approach Dublin port. And then moving into more Wexford, we're looking at the Glass Carrig area, one of the early Norman mottes that's eroding off the coast there. And within Wexford Harbour, there's Rosslare Fort. This is part of our area 3. We got the we're looking at at Rosslare Fort, which was a village which was submerged after a storm. It was abandoned after 1922, so now you can only visit it during low tide. And also on the west coast, southwest coast of Ireland, there we're looking around Ballinskelligs Bay. In Dingle Bay, there we've got some shipwrecks, the Manchester Merchant on the water, and on the intertidal zone we've got the Sunbeam. I'm also doing on the Dingle Peninsula. They're looking at more promontory forts around Dunbeg, and we did some excavations last year at that Theratis promontory fort last May. And so it's because of climate change that we're here, and why we're investigating it and try to raise awareness amongst the communities, doing that by seeing how the heritage is being eroded. So we want to see what strategies and tools we can deal with these climate change impacts. So certainly we can see from the Met Erin records, you can see there's certainly some extremes, and you see the temperature like last July was recorded at Valencia Observatory, plus 20 degrees centigrade, greater than 20 degrees at night. And then we've also got autumn last year was the warmest on record. Last February was a wetter month than average, and there was that succession of storms there coming through the Dudley, Eunice and Franklin. One of the forts I'll be talking about a lot during this talk is Woodstown Promontory Fort. That's near Annestown there. You can see the River Anne Valley and the centre there, the Woodstown Promontory Forts to the left. And part of the questions we want to answer, because there's a whole series of stacks and small islets in front of this fort here. So we want to see, was this all connected in the past? How much erosion has occurred? And what did the landscape look a bit like in the past? So within this area, there is a very old habitation, just 3 kilometres up the River Anne Valley. There portal tombs, and from Neolithic Bronze Age period. But you also, much closer to the fort itself, you've also got the standing stones as well. There's at least 2 standing stones in the field, just the evidence of with just close to that Promontory fort. Certainly, we were. We could see the top left there. There's the bank and the ditch of the Promontory fort at Woodstown, and you can see there's 2 banks and ditches, and you can see the eroding cliff face here. And certainly last February, we were alerted by a local resident of Anstown that there had been some more erosion, and we can see the evidence of that there in the bottom right picture. You see there's been some collapse around the bank there at the Promontory fort. This is an old UK hydrographic image from 1849. The lieutenants would have been drawing the maps and the charts and everything. And here's the sailing view looking up the Anne Valley. And to the right, you can see where Woodstown Fort is there. It's labelled as Green Island. That's one of the islets off the other side there. I think certainly the people drawing must have been maybe higher up on the tall ship that they were drawing, because they seem to have much more higher view looking down than we had. The National Parks and Wildlife Service took us out on the bottom drawing, a bottom photograph there, trying to recreate it, and so we're much lower down in their rib. But you can certainly see from Green Island there in front of the fort there, seems to be much more complete and much more an island itself, and much more broken up today than we saw 2 years ago. Dunhill Castle is also built on an earlier promontory fort, so it's up there. It's there, but it's got a later medieval castle on it as well. And there's 18th century lime kiln in this area, and the Anstown village as well. Other areas where we got the copper mining, we find that along this coast. You've got the engine houses at Pancardstown still surviving, but there was a lot more of them in the area. Here's where the ore house is in the centre here, and the boats would have come in to take away the ore that would have come down from all these engine houses. And you can see with the adits and the cliffs as well there. This is all around Bunmannon as well. But so looking at what the evidence is, because we work with the Geological Survey of Ireland, and they've been tying on part of the project, and they've been tying in the underwater with what's on the land. So here we have their top right, we have their drone imagery of the coast around Knocknahan there, just to the east of Bunmannon, and then where the landing place was there. And you can see that's actually been to bring those ships in to collect the ore and stuff. They would have been probably taken over to Wales as well, the ore, but they would have that rock's been mined through as well to allow the ships to reach the quay in the past. And it's also in an area of a much older promontory fort, where there was two Ogham stones, maybe from the 4th, 6th century AD around this area. So that kind of shows you the long use, perhaps, of this area. We'd probably like to find more dating evidence of this of when they were occurred. So that's giving us some idea of when perhaps the promontory forts and how long perhaps the mining has been going on in this area. And as well, we've got the this complex of Napoleonic towers along the coast. None of them really survive upstanding today. Here at Island Hubbock, to the western area of our Copper Coast kind of study area here at Ballyvoyle Head, you have Island Hubbock, and you have 2 more forts there on Ballyvoyle Head recorded there. This is the highest cliffs. They're about 80 meters high around this area, so they've a good view, a good position to put one of your Napoleonic towers. So the imagery that's been put together from UAV, unmanned aerial vehicle drone imagery, you can start to see some of the banks and the that we can then see in the land itself. So there is still some evidence of where the signal tower was. Perhaps even they kept some of the wall, the mortar wall here, as opposed to the more dry stone walls. And that survives in the one UK Hydrographic Office image there from 1849. We also, so it's eroded away. There was a path down the cliff to access the landing place. So you can see the collapse there to the right on the bottom right image, where the path no longer is accessible all the way down. It's been much more recent collapse. So looking along the coast from the Ballyvoyle Head, you can see Island Hubbock Fort just to the left there, but Gull Island, The Templo brick stack there is a stack today, but the Church of the Old Bricks. And in the 19th century, the Ordnance Survey recorded there was a building on the stack itself, and the Old Bricks were an important family, the kings of this area in the early medieval period. Dunnabratton, Fort of the Britons, showing some ties with Britain. Perhaps around this time, Sheep Island is where the Island O'Kanes are, another family in this area. That's a promontory fort. Hook Head in the just about, you can't quite see it in this image, but Hook Head is roughly around that area there. What there's tradition of an early medieval lighthouse in this area. So showing where the Napoleonic tower was using an area that's probably been used for a long time with promontory forts, and has a long tradition of looking around this coast, and there's a lot of important areas. So moving back to Woodstown Promontory Fort and looking at the changes there, we're seeing there's quite obvious changes from the first edition from 1840 to the second edition around 1905 on the survey maps. You can certainly see the Green Island has split into two. There seems to be a line of erosion coming from east to west with the arch formation kind of cutting off a lot of the weaknesses in the rock and eroding this promontory. And there used to be a road up from the lime kiln from Lansdowne Beach along the coast there, and that's just too dangerous today. We asked permission from the farmer to access from the land. And so yeah, just seeing what evidence we have from the past in much more detail. You can see this about the bank and the ditch from the 1840 is about 60 meters in length. And then certainly by the second edition, it's about 45 meters. So you're having about 15 meters of erosion. And then compare that over 100 years from 1905 to 2005, you've lost another 10 meters. So if you lost 10 meters in 100 years, you're talking about in 1,000 years, you're going to have 100 meters perhaps of erosion. That's going to be probably the weaker areas of the rock falling through the but this gives you some idea. And what we want to do with the CHERISH project is now to get much more accurate data of change and see is it increasing, and much more centimeter accurate, and is it increasing now due to the storms. So certainly we're working with the Royal Commission of Ancient Historical Monuments of Wales, and they taught us came over, that's in Aberystwyth as well, and they brought us over to showed their skills for aerial survey, and they showed us how to record a lot of the promontory forts. So we get a much wider view flying from Cork to Waterford, around the Salties, back to Wexford and back again, taking pictures, and then we can know which try and concentrate on at least a couple of these forts in the future. So with that, we would use the UAV or the drone, the unmanned aerial vehicle. And just an example of its use here at a promontory fort at Anstown. This is on the opposite side of the River Ann to Woodstown, and you can see there's the bank just on the stack today. Westrop in the early 20th century says he could get to this to visit this island. So there has been a lot of erosion probably since then. It's accessible today. Partly this might be to do with the mining activities. There was copper exploration here, and so that's probably weakened the rocks as well. But also kind of shows part of the reason why the forts are probably there. They're probably exploiting the mining heritage as well as the sea resources. So looking at the model that can be produced from the UAV, the drone data, you can see here is the promontory fort on the top right there, the banks, the ditches. But here you can see on Green Island itself, there's a square feature. It's seems to be perhaps a potential hut site that's associated with the fort. So this is further evidence that the promontory there was previously attached to Green Island, and we can see what heritage is being lost over time. And then, so closing in, you can see when we're looking at some of the erosion here, just from this, there's another bank on this small promontory just to the west of the main promontory, and you can see the top right, and it's very seems to be slightly higher bedrock that they've reused, and it's the same material for the outer bank here. So it's not, when you look at, there's only like 80 meters in between. And when I talked to you before about it's probably been at least 100 meters in 1,000 years. Well, roughly, I don't, it wouldn't be surprising to think that these two were actually linked up in the past. They're giving you a much bigger, much wider fort, a much wider area. So it gives you some idea of what's been lost. Remember, if it was linked up to Green Island as well, we have a like over 100 meter and 200 meter long fort here, over 1,000 years ago. So we wanted to investigate more the on Green Island. You have to wait for a spring low tide. We have a limited amount of time. Let's go over to the island. Let's do the resistivity. So we will be able to investigate this hut site. So we're laying out, and that certainly shows up more rock in a kind of square area. So there is further there is further potential of confirming the UAV data. So yeah, so continuing on with geophysics, we use a magnetometer cart at here it is. Here we couldn't, it was too much difficult to get it across the intertidal zone and up onto Green Island, but we used it in some of the fields landward at the Promontory Fort. This is one of them at the Ballynarid, where the Alona Brick is, and the Temple of the Brick. That's the island and the Church of the O'Bricks, who were an important royal family in this area. And so Alona Brick there, you can see from the model, UAV model here. And we've added on top that the magnetometer data, the magnetometer, any disturbances in the magnetic field. So any ditches that have been dug, you can see the ridge and furrow. You can see the old field systems amongst this area, possibly some geology as well, some old iron pits and area. I'll just mention here, there's a lot of features there, is this area here called the Castle Field in the promontory here, and this is there seems to be almost a line of ditches, little pits, and there's a ditch through the almost a ditch through the middle, and perhaps two kind of circular banks there, and so it seems to be eroding. And the local farmer called this the Castle Field, and hadn't been ploughed before, so it seems whatever features here is being respected by the field systems before. And then the closer look at the UAV, the drone model of the Alona Brick itself, the island of the O'Bricks. There are probable little hut site and square features, rectangular features showing up there within that as well. And that ties in to hut sites, but you can't access that today to confirm because of the it's almost a goat track to the stack. Looking at that from the more drone images, you can see what has been some collapse of the cliff, the landslips. There between the 2018 and 2019, and so it's fresh surface there. You can see the new slip, but then you can see these grassed over areas where there's been older slips, and it's an important area for silver and lead mining in the 18th century. So that's probably weakened the rock a lot more. So looking at our change and mapping, like what we did from our much more controlled look at the of where the erosion was, and we put ground control, and you can see there's certainly some collapse happened there around that cliff area, and closing in on that there you can see almost up to 5 meters of erosion of collapse in the center, with some build up on the bottom of the cliff, you know, with where it's high, where it's fallen down there. And you can just see the bottom there in 2019, and again where the fresher surface is in 2021. And so taking a closer look at the actually erosion facing there of where the Alona bricks in the background there. So this the top of the cliff. This would be probably where the banks and the ditches were, the entrance to the Promontory Fort. Now, because they're kind of more they've weakened and they've eroded away. And so we took some samples from that soil. And so the University of Aberystwyth colleagues there, we kind of looked at that area. We used the X-ray fluorescence, and this will tell us what the elements are within it. And we saw within we got high levels of lead within the fort itself. That's our context 1, 2, and 3. There you can see that's quite high up, but also very high amounts of sulfur at 1095. But so it seems to be, but with there's other contexts there from 4 to 10 there from outside the Promontory Fort, which are very low levels of lead, and So it does seem to show that something was happening with lead and perhaps smelting with all the sulfur evidence as well that was happening within the fort. So it's a such technique we certainly like to do elsewhere, and perhaps even take this into where we might find more copper if we actually looked, around Bunmahon or Knockmahon at the Promontory forts there. So it's a technique we're experimenting. So we're going to try that again, hopefully in the future, as a plan. So you can see this is where we do some coring as well. The University of Aberystwyth come over for coring within the Promontory fort, and we've also got coring within the paleo environments into the lakes. This is at Clonea strand when you get to the peat levels, and Clonea's near Dungarvan. So behind that you have peat, quite low lying land, and it's been building up with peat for a while. So the data there. Certainly coming back from radiocarbon dates as well, we can see it goes back at least 6,500 years before present, and so this is by the glacial, at the end of the glacial area, and we have certainly around Storm around 4,460, with a big TI there. You can see there's a spike there sometime in the Bronze Age. So it was this a climate deterioration for the titanium to be washed in, and then much more recently. You see maybe the top 25 centimeters there. You can see might be that would probably be maybe the last century. So there's certainly events and storminess events coming through much more recently. So probably need to get a few more dates here to add into this and when did they happen. But this is something that we might be able to tie into. It's probably more of historical periods, newspapers, and so it might be able to tie some of these storms that washed in this titanium. You can certainly see with the bromium and the BR to the right there, that's certainly increasing as well, and that's probably coming in with the with sea spray and storms as well. So it's something that probably could be done in libraries and to work out when these storms and why they suddenly seem to be increasing more recently. Recording the cliff edge at Woodstown Promontory Fort, you can see the different contexts. And we can see certainly with you have two banks here, the inner banks. We're kind of drawing these up, and then so you can see what's been built up and the two ditches. And so with the inner bank there, we seem to have a clay layer just right above the glacial. So but the glacial be natural, but then you have the clay layer as well. But you kind of thought that's probably natural as well, but it kind of suggests there was probably maybe a lake here, and that seems to be dug through to build the ditch, and they piled down top of the clay layer to build the bank. So it seems to indicate there was then there was enough space to have a lake here before the Promontory Fort was built. And there's the clay layer again, just from that angle. But we've also kind of seen it on other areas of the Promontory forts here in Pembrokeshire, which kind of as if they were kind of using kind of similar kind of environments, tying it in with our Welsh colleagues are saying. So you can see here's an example of the clay layer close up in Pembrokeshire Promontory Fort. You can see where the banks, the ditches are. And so the artifacts that we're getting from Woodstown, certainly the rounded stones would have to be brought up from the beach, and so they'd be for hammer stones or for rubbing. There's the flint as well. It's not a tool as such, but it's rare in this area. It seems to have been struck, so it might be a waste flake of some area, and that was So I haven't seen any flint nodules on the beach there at Anstown. I know I've seen it on the Salties to the east, but so it's quite rare. So it must have been brought up, I think, to the fort itself. Another thing, also tying the Promontory Fort in with Wales as well was this stone as well, where they certainly find a lot of the hill forts of around Britain. They have these stones suggested to be slingshot stones. And it kind of leads to almost the Promontory Fort is for defence, and this came from when we were going along the edge there, looking at the bank and ditches, these artifacts. So there seems to be quite a lot of evidence which is being lost and is not being recorded, because you can't seem to even find when you look closely at these forts itself. So there's rarely do you find that much, but here it does seem to be very proficient, and there's a good potential to find more material here, because that was just a cliff section face, not an excavation. So the coring that we did into the banks, the bottom one is the bank. And this was about 2 meters depth, and that's just the bottom 1 meter. So you can see the clay layer when we're into perhaps the lake sediments below. So you've got the bank material on top built up. It's much looser and more mixed sediment, and then so this top one is the is the inner ditch of the just beside that bank layer. So at the top, that's the top there. We got about 5 centimeters depth. You're getting some Manhattan popcorn, crisp packets. So that's left. That's probably about 1950s and later. But at the base of that, we've certainly got some charcoal just above the glacial, about 5 centimeters above the glacial. So that would be cut into the glacial. So the ditch would have been building up with sediment since it was built up. So somewhere about 5 centimeters above, you're getting the charcoal. The charcoal has been dated just recently to 40 AD by Queen. So when we were looking at the previous evidence, we were thinking of the Ogham stone, suggesting probably almost into early medieval. And tying in with the stories of the O'Bricks and stuff, and maybe some of the smelting evidence, that came from more inland, was more early medieval, and also tied other promontory forts like Dalkey Island, or I believe 6th century AD, and Dunbeg there in Kerry, that have been dated. That's probably like 8th, 9th century for the banks and ditches. So to have actually promontory fort here from the Iron Age of 40 AD ties in very well with. It's different. I'm not saying all forts along the coast are all Iron Age, but in this area, but like it's certainly is very interesting, and it ties in with the promontory forts over in Pembrokeshire and Cornwall and in Brittany and northern Spain as well. So they're all, it seemed to be around that time contemporary around that period. So that's something exciting. We'd probably like to get some more dates here for this in the future. So yeah, just going to want to conclude. Yeah, which just how to get involved. We're certainly any more evidence to record the erosion of the cultural heritage. We are developing an app, to record with the Geological Survey, and to record the coast. What the areas of erosion, and where people can report in and see if you get new sites appearing, or even the sites that were well known, and how the changes that have occurred. And so and if there's any older images, from older maps or paintings that you may have photographs, so you can always compare the change and see how much it has been increasing. Has it been increasing more recently? Because we got this evidence before it's all lost. So it's all images are good to know, and rough and dates as well. I've already brought up about the storm thing, for the storm environments and the paleo environment from the core there at Clonea. So like it'd be useful to go through all the newspapers, how much the occurrences of storms over time, how often they occur, and then we can tie them in. Perhaps we get more dates for the core, and perhaps even further back in time. And so shall I leave it there? And is that okay, everyone?
Yeah, that's perfect. Huge thank you, Dr. Edward Pollard, for a very informative talk. If anyone has any questions, if they would like to pop them in the chat or the Q&A there.